Across the grand halls of Europe's most prestigious museums, behind protective glass and illuminated by carefully designed lighting, lie the treasures of Africa: royal regalia, sacred masks, golden crowns, bronze plaques, ancestral statues, and ceremonial thrones. These artifacts, once imbued with spiritual meaning, political power, and cultural identity, are admired by millions who walk the halls of institutions like the British Museum, the Louvre, and the Humboldt Forum. Yet few visitors know or care to ask how these treasures arrived there. The journey of these artifacts is not one of diplomacy or trade. It is a story of conquest, violence, and colonial exploitation. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as European empires expanded their grip on the African continent in what is now known as the Scramble for Africa, their armies didn't just claim territory, they plundered culture. One of the most infamous examples is the British invasion of the Kingdom of Benin in 1897. In retaliation for a conflict with local forces, British troops launched a brutal expedition, razed the royal city, and carted off thousands of priceless bronze plaques and sculptures, known today as the Benin Bronzes. These intricately crafted pieces, some dating back to the 13th century, were more than decorative art. They recorded royal histories, preserved religious beliefs, and represented the authority of the Oba, the king. Within weeks of the looting, many of the bronzes were being sold at European auctions and soon appeared in the collections of major Western museums. But Benin was not alone. Across Africa, colonial powers engaged in systematic cultural theft. French forces in West Africa removed sacred relics and royal heirlooms from Mali, Senegal, and Côte d'Ivoire. German troops in Namibia and Cameroon looted ceremonial drums, spiritual icons, and even human remains from local communities. Belgium's brutal reign over the Congo saw ivory, copper, and countless indigenous artifacts shipped to European museums, often taken from communities subjected to forced labor and unspeakable violence. These objects were not only stolen, but stripped of their context and meaning. Once sacred, they became curiosities, displayed without stories, labeled with foreign interpretations, their significance reduced to aesthetics. Western institutions built reputations and careers around these collections. Curators spoke of universal heritage and global custodianship, often avoiding any acknowledgement of the violence and coercion behind the acquisitions. Exhibits were carefully curated to inspire wonder, but rarely to invite critical reflection. Labels might say acquired, donated, or purchased, but seldom did they say looted, plundered, or taken by force. In this silence, museums became complicit in rewriting history, presenting imperial theft as cultural enrichment. For decades, African voices calling for the return of these artifacts were dismissed or ignored. Requests were met with excuses: that the countries of origin lacked the facilities to preserve them, that artifacts would be safer in Europe, or that returning them would open the floodgates for restitution demands worldwide. But beneath these arguments was a deeper reluctance, a refusal to confront colonial guilt and acknowledge that cultural objects taken without consent remain a form of stolen wealth. Today, however, a new reckoning is underway. Scholars, artists, activists, and governments from Africa and beyond are pushing the global conversation on restitution. Countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and Ethiopia have launched formal campaigns for the return of specific artifacts. In 2021, Germany agreed to repatriate hundreds of Benin bronzes to Nigeria. France has returned prized treasures to Benin and Senegal. Museums in the Netherlands and the United Kingdom are now reviewing the origins of their collections and, in some cases, engaging in long overdue dialogue with communities of origin. This shift is not just about returning objects. It's about restoring dignity, memory, and identity. These artifacts are not simply old pieces of wood, stone, or metal. They are storytellers. They are sacred. They represent the right of African people to preserve and define their history on their own terms. Repatriation is not erasure, it is justice. It is an acknowledgement that history must be confronted honestly, even when it is uncomfortable. As the world grows more aware of the legacies of empire, the question we must ask is not whether we should return stolen heritage, but why it took so long to ask. Behind every artifact in a museum case lies a deeper truth, that culture cannot be owned by those who took it through force, and until those objects return home, the halls of those great museums will echo with a silence louder than any applause, a silence that demands we listen and finally act.